Of course, here's an introduction that sets up suspense while keeping it within YouTube's guidelines. I never thought a simple visit to my uncle's house would turn into something I'd never forget. It started as just another weekend trip, something I'd done 100 times before. My uncle lived out in the countryside, where the nearest neighbour was miles away, and the only sound at night was the wind whistling through the trees. He had a small ranch, a few chickens, and one massive horse named Shadow. Shadow was his pride and joy, a sleek black stallion that he treated better than most people. At first, everything seemed normal. My uncle greeted me with his usual rough laugh, his hand gripping my shoulder a little too tightly, like always. We had dinner, talked about nothing in particular, and I figured this would just be another quiet weekend. But that night, something felt off. Maybe it was the way my uncle kept watching me across the table, or how he kept bringing up Shadow, talking about how strong he was, how fast, how well trained. He had this strange look in his eyes, like he was leading up to something. Then, just as I was about to head to bed, he said it. "Come outside with me. I need your help with something." I hesitated. It was late, the air outside was thick and humid, and I was already exhausted. But he insisted. His voice had that edge to it, the kind that told me saying no wasn't really an option. So I followed him out the back door, my stomach twisting with unease. Shadow stood in the moonlit yard, his dark coat gleaming under the soft glow. He was calm, almost too calm, like he already knew something I didn't. My uncle walked over to the fence, grabbing a thick rope from the post. That's when he turned to me with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I need you to do something for me," he said, his voice low and serious. And at that moment, I realized, whatever was about to happen, I wasn't going to like it. "Let me know if you want any tweaks." I kept it suspenseful, engaging, and within YouTube's guidelines while making sure it feels natural and human written. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as I glanced between my uncle and the thick rope in his hands. The way he looked at me, like he was sizing me up, sent a chill down my spine. Shadow let out a slow huff, shifting his weight, but he didn't seem nervous. I wished I could say the same for myself. "What do you need help with?" I asked, my voice coming out weaker than I wanted. My uncle smirked, rolling the rope between his fingers. "Just a little task," he said. "Nothing too hard, but it's important, and I need you to listen real careful." His tone was firm, almost like a warning, and I felt my stomach knot even tighter. My uncle had always been the type of man who expected things done his way, no questions asked. He wasn't the kind to explain himself either. You did what he said, or you'd regret it. The night air was heavy around us, thick with the scent of hay and damp earth. The only sounds were the rustling trees and the occasional distant hoot of an owl. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that made you hyper-aware of every little movement. I hesitated, but I knew better than to argue. "All right," I finally said. "What do you want me to do?" He stepped closer, handing me one end of the rope. His fingers brushed against mine, rough and calloused from years of working outside. "I need you to hold this steady," he said, his eyes locked on mine. "No matter what." I looked down at the rope, then back at him. There was something in his face, something unreadable, a mix of excitement and something else I couldn't quite place. Shadow stood perfectly still, his ears flicking as he watched us. It was almost like he was waiting too. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My uncle exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Don't ask questions, just do it," he muttered. A sense of unease crawled up my spine, but I nodded, gripping the rope tighter. My fingers trembled slightly, though I hoped he didn't notice. He turned away, stepping toward Shadow, and I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The seconds stretched into what felt like forever. The barn loomed in the background, its doors slightly open, revealing nothing but darkness inside. A gust of wind swept through the yard, rustling the leaves, but it did nothing to shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. And then, just when I thought I couldn't stand the silence any longer, my uncle finally spoke. "Whatever happens next," he said, his voice low and steady, "don't let go." I gripped the rope tighter, my pulse racing. I had no idea what I was about to be a part of, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't ready for it. My fingers tightened around the rope, my palms already damp with sweat. Shadow shifted slightly, his dark eyes flicking toward me, almost like he was warning me. My uncle moved with slow, deliberate steps, his boots crunching against the dirt as he circled. "Good," he muttered under his breath. "You're doing good." I wasn't sure if he was talking to me or to Shadow. The night felt thicker now, pressing in around us. I wanted to ask him again what we were doing, why this felt more like some kind of test than a simple chore, but I knew better. My uncle wasn't the type to explain himself, and he definitely wasn't the type to be questioned. Then he reached for something just behind the fence, hidden in the shadows. I couldn't see what it was, but the second he touched it, Shadow let out a sharp snort and took a step back. Instinct kicked in, and I pulled the rope tighter, my grip burning. "Easy," my uncle murmured, not to me, but to the horse. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat now, the tension thick between us. Shadow wasn't acting wild, but he wasn't calm either. It was like he knew something was coming, something he didn't want any part of. And neither did I. "Just hold tight," my uncle said again, his voice low and steady. And then, in one quick motion, he turned toward me, holding something in his hands. The moment I saw it, my stomach dropped. I suddenly understood. Whatever this was, whatever he was about to do, I was in way too deep. The moment my uncle turned toward me, my breath caught in my throat. The object in his hands glinted under the dim moonlight, and though I couldn't make out exactly what it was, I knew it wasn't good. My grip on the rope tightened instinctively, my knuckles going white. Shadow let out another uneasy snort, shifting his weight like he was deciding whether to run or stay put. "Steady now," my uncle muttered, more to himself than to me. His voice was calm, too calm. My mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. Was this some kind of twisted lesson, a test, or was it something worse? I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering in my ears. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to drop the rope, to turn and run, but my feet wouldn't move. Shadow stomped the ground, his muscles tensing. He knew. He could sense it, whatever it was. I wanted to ask, to demand an answer, but my uncle's face had changed. The smirk was gone. His eyes were darker now, locked onto me with something I couldn't quite place. "Don't let go," he said again, firmer this time, "no matter what." The air felt electric, charged with something unspoken, something heavy. My palms burned against the rope, the fibers digging into my skin. My uncle took a step closer, raising the object just slightly, and for a split second, I saw Shadow's ears pin back, his muscles coil. I had no idea what was about to happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever it was too late to stop it now. My breath was shallow, my hands aching as I gripped the rope tighter. My uncle took another step forward, and Shadow flinched, muscles rippling under his dark coat. The air between us was thick, charged with something I couldn't name. I didn't know what my uncle was planning, but I knew deep down that I wanted no part of it. Then, just as my uncle raised the object higher, a sharp noise split through the night. A rustling. Quick, sudden movement from the trees just beyond the fence line. Shadow's ears flicked toward the sound, his body tensing even more. I turned my head slightly, my heartbeat a wild drum in my chest. "Who's there?" my uncle barked, his voice sharp, edged with something close to anger. The silence stretched. Then a twig snapped. Someone was out there, watching. My uncle's entire posture shifted, and for the first time that night, I saw something flicker across his face. Not anger, not control, fear. Shadow snorted, tugging at the rope in my hands, but I barely noticed. My focus was on the shadows just beyond the trees. My uncle's grip on the object in his hands tightened, his knuckles turning white. And then, a voice. "Put it down, Roy." The sound sent a cold wave through my body. It wasn't just anyone. I knew that voice. It was deep, steady, familiar. It was my father. I turned so fast it made me dizzy, my eyes scanning the darkness. And then he stepped forward, the moonlight hitting his face. He looked different, his jaw tense, his eyes locked onto my uncle with an expression I'd never seen before. He wasn't just here by chance, he had been waiting. My uncle didn't move. His whole body was rigid, his fingers gripping the object tighter. He glanced at me, then back at my father, his jaw twitching. The tension between them was thick enough to choke on, and I suddenly realized this had nothing to do with me at all. This was between them. "Boy's got nothing to do with this," my uncle muttered. My father didn't look at me. His focus never left my uncle. "You don't get to decide that," he said, his voice even but cold. "Not anymore." A long, heavy silence followed. My uncle's fingers twitched, and for a split second I saw it, the decision being made in his head. Whatever was about to happen, it was going to happen now, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The moment stretched, thick and suffocating. My father and uncle stood frozen, locked in a silent battle of wills. I could feel my own pulse in my fingertips, my grip tightening on the rope, even though my mind screamed at me to let go. Shadow let out another uneasy snort, sensing the tension crackling in the air. Then, in a blur of motion, my uncle moved. He lunged, not at my father, but toward me. His hand shot out, fingers closing around my wrist, his grip like iron. I stumbled back, my heart slamming against my ribs. The object in his other hand caught the moonlight for a split second, and I finally saw it clearly. A knife. "Let him go," my father said, his voice low, controlled, but I could hear the threat beneath it. My uncle's grip tightened. "You don't understand," he muttered, his breath ragged. "This ain't your business anymore." Shadow, spooked by the sudden movement, reared up with a wild neigh. The rope burned against my palm as he yanked back, his raw strength nearly pulling me off my feet. In that split second of chaos, I saw my father move. He lunged forward, grabbing my uncle's arm, twisting it hard. The knife clattered to the ground, disappearing into the dirt. My uncle let out a strangled curse, stumbling back. My father didn't let go. He shoved him hard, and my uncle hit the ground with a dull thud. "Stay down," my father warned. His voice was steady, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the years of unspoken history between them boiling just beneath the surface. My uncle sat there, breathing hard, his hands clenched into fists. His face was unreadable now, a mask of something I couldn't quite place. Anger, regret, fear. Then, just when I thought it was over, he laughed, a low, bitter chuckle that made my skin crawl. He looked up at my father, shaking his head. "You really think this is over?" he said, his voice dripping with something cold, something final. A shiver ran through me. My father didn't answer. He just took a step back, grabbed my arm, and pulled me away. "Let's go," he said. I didn't argue. I turned, following him into the darkness, my heart still pounding. But as we walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that my uncle's words weren't just a threat, they were a promise. We walked in silence, my father's grip firm on my arm as he led me away from the barn, away from my uncle, away from whatever had just almost happened. My legs felt unsteady, my breathing still uneven. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but my throat was too tight, my mind too scrambled to form the words. The only sound was the crunch of our footsteps on the gravel, the distant rustling of trees, and the faint rhythmic beat of Shadow's hooves as he settled back into the quiet. My father didn't say anything at first, and I didn't push. It was like we both needed a moment to process the weight of what had just happened. Finally, as we neared the house, he let out a slow breath and loosened his grip on my arm. You okay? He asked, his voice softer now. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure if it was true. Yeah, I said. I think so. He studied me for a moment, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Guilt, maybe, or something close to it. I should have come sooner, he muttered. I knew he was getting worse. I should have stopped this before you got pulled into it. I frowned, trying to make sense of his words. What was this? I asked finally. What was he trying to do? My father hesitated, then shook his head. Your uncle's been holding on to a lot of anger for a long time, and sometimes, when people let that fester, they start looking for ways to take control, even if it means dragging others down with them. He sighed. I won't let him do that to you. Something about the way he said it made me believe him. We reached his truck, and he pulled open the passenger door. Come on, we're leaving. I hesitated, glancing back at the dark silhouette of the barn. I could still feel my uncle's eyes on me, even though I couldn't see him. His last words echoed in my head. You really think this is over? A shiver crawled up my spine, but I forced myself to push it away. Whatever was left unfinished between my father and my uncle, I wanted no part of it. I climbed into the truck, shutting the door behind me. As the engine rumbled to life and we pulled away from the ranch, I stole one last glance in the side mirror. The barn, the house, the endless stretch of land, it all faded into the night. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally leaving something behind.